Chapter 1 Initiation. Ricky sat on the front porch of his best friend Quinn's house. Tonight would be their initiation into the Hawk Gang, and Ricky was itching to go. Quinn's sister, Rachel, peeked out the door and said, "He's still packing his backpack." Ricky rolled his eyes. His friend was always busy trying to prepare for stuff, and half the time all the stuff he brought wasn't even necessary. He opened his mouth and was about to ask Rachel to tell Quinn to hurry up, but suddenly his friend rushed around from the backyard with a huge backpack in one hand and a notebook in the other. Quinn said, "All right, let's go." Ricky said in a sarcastic voice, "Are you sure you don't need any more stuff?" Quinn didn't seem to notice that Ricky was joking and said, "Actually, I was thinking of bringing my camera. Do you think I need it?" Ricky said, "No." Quinn looked at Ricky and said, "Maybe I should go grab it just in case." Quinn was stopped in mid-sentence as he turned to see that Ricky was already running down the street towards the Hawk Gang's secret treehouse. Quinn yelled, "Hey, wait for me!" as he rushed down the street, limping from the weight of the huge backpack. A few minutes later, the two reached the huge oak tree on the corner of Finland and Russell Ave. Towards the very top was a huge wooden treehouse with a door and a rope ladder that looked a decade old. Suddenly, a head peeked out and said, "You coming or what?" Ricky nodded and began to climb up the rope ladder. Quinn shuddered and began to climb up after him. He got about 2 feet off the ground before he began to slide back down from the heavy weight of the backpack. Ricky said, "Oh, for crying out loud, just grab your notebook and leave the rest." Quinn dropped the backpack on the ground and reached in to grab a pencil and something else that Ricky couldn't see. Then he climbed up the treehouse as well. The boy who had greeted them, whose name was Steve, motioned for them to come inside. The two gazed around the treehouse, which was full of trophies and medals from the members of the gang who had worked together to win them. Ricky's attention was particularly set on a large golden trophy with the words, "Nevada State Championship for Go-Kart Racing." His older brother had won this trophy just before a sad accident where he had been hit by a car while riding home from school. Ricky's dream was to win the same award this year in honor of his brother. Ricky snapped out of the thought as a tall boy clapped his hands for attention. Ricky and Quinn looked up at the leader of the Hawk Gang, Billy Richard. Billy waited a few seconds as the other two members of the gang, Sam and Pete York, quieted down. Then he said, "All right, today we are initiating 2 new members into the gang. If they pass the test, they'll be allowed to join." All the members nodded. Billy said, "So let's get on with it." The 4 members of the gang, plus Ricky and Quinn, climbed back down the ladder and they walked towards an old abandoned warehouse on the south side of town. Ricky already knew what was going to happen. His brother had told him about it when he had been initiated. Inside the warehouse, there were several booby traps meant to scare new members, the worst of which was an old welding visor that had a set of red light bulbs behind it that would turn on if somebody stepped on the floorboards in front of it. Ricky was confident that he could pass the test without being scared, but as he turned to smile at Quinn, he noticed his friend was shaking. He whispered to his friend that everything inside wasn't real, but just a way to try and scare away new members. Quinn nodded and narrowed his eyes, and stood up straight, trying to shake off his fear. Billy nodded and said, "Go ahead." The two walked into the warehouse, looking around the room trying to find the door into the next one. Suddenly, there was a clanking. Quinn whirled around to look at where the sound had come from. He squinted his eyes into the darkness to see that it was just a drill bit that had fallen to the floor. Quinn let out a "whew," and the two continued walking across the room. Ricky pointed towards an old door frame, and they walked towards it. Suddenly, there was a creak, and a wooden beam in the ceiling fell down. Ricky ignored it, and they continued through the door. Ricky saw the next trap before it had even been set off. A chainsaw that had a small amount of gas left in it, set to turn on if somebody walked through the next door. Ricky rushed through the next door as it turned on. Ricky looked ahead. This was the final trap, the welding visor with the red light bulbs. He looked at it, smiling as he stepped on the floorboards. Slowly, its eyes came to life and shone onto his face. Quinn slapped his hands over his mouth, trying to keep from screaming. Ricky continued, but then something unexpected happened. Ricky heard a creaking noise. He turned to see if it was one of the previous traps getting set off again by accident. But no, the chainsaw had stopped now, and the beam in the ceiling had already fallen. Then he spotted something. A small, eerie green glow in the corner of the room. His brother hadn't told him about this. Maybe it was a new trap that had been put in. No, the initiation never changed. It was part of the gang's rules. Then Ricky's heart skipped a beat. In the corner of the room, he saw a large green thing move, and he stared as 3 bright green eyes blinked. Ricky couldn't help it. He let loose and screamed.